Hey there, want to destroy trust fast?
Easy. Just start assuming.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Dan Alexa,
I'm on Sleep Bowden.
and we are the co founders of Mindful Coaching Excellence Institute, MCXI, and we are here with a new video for you today.
We are talking about the number one habit that's wrecking your coaching and probably your personal life. We would like to talk about that number one habit, which is assumptions, assuming. And we're going to dive in a little bit around coaching and how creating assumptions in a coaching session can wreak havoc in the session. So, Dan, when you think about coaching in a session and us creating assumptions quietly as the coaching is happening and the client is speaking, what are some assumption things that come to mind? What does that look like to you?
There's a number of them that come up. The first one is we get a sense of where they need to go. Like just like their family members and friends that shut them down so quickly. If we just stop, you just need to go do this, all based on assumption. So if we get suddenly attached to our perspective and shooting on them or offering advice and insight that they didn't ask for, that's all assumption because we don't know what they really need. Um, the the tricky one that I've heard, and this comes mostly from spiritual coaches, of which I include myself in that space as someone who's intuitive, of because it's coming from my intuition, it must be true because it comes from that higher place. You don't know that. You
Yeah.
don't know that. It's still coming through my perceptual filters. So I have to treat it that it is flawed information until we confirm it. And anything beyond that is just an assumption. And there's that classic breakdown of the word assume. And I do not want to bring the ass of me to the session.
Yeah, I think also a lot of times it can sound like I don't think they want to go there. So we've already there's an area that maybe they could explore, but we as a coach have assumed they don't want to go there. Or they were really mad. They made a facial expression. They looked really mad. We've created again another assumption based on their body language or in their tone or in a facial expression. We've just assumed it without even asking. And isn't that funny? I mean, I think that we're all guilty of assuming things. We think if they make a facial expression the way we make a facial expression of being mad, that must mean that that's what they're thinking. And really, we don't know. We don't know because we're assuming. And now I want to talk a little bit about why assumptions are so dangerous. For me, when I think about why assumptions are so dangerous, is it's a false certainty. It's also a distorted reality. There, you also break trust. Trust is completely changed because you've created an assumption. There's also, I think, wasted energy. I mean, I have siblings who spend hours in assuming what they thought somebody did or didn't do. And I'm like, wow, that is so much energy that we've just put into assuming a bunch of things that we don't know anything about. And I kind of want to touch a little bit on the distorted reality. What's coming up for you as you're hearing some of these things I'm throwing out?
Draws me back to what you were talking about a second ago with the facial expressions or the tone. We can observe a facial expression. As soon as we put an emotional label on it of mad, angry, happy, joyous, whatever, that's our assumption. They're smiling. Oh, they must be happy. Oh, you look really happy. No, they're smiling. That's a neutral observation. Their tone changed. Maybe they got more assertive, aggressive in their tone. That doesn't mean they're angry. Your tone changed. Tell me about that. So when we notice a change, and I think that we'll actually be touching on this later in this conversation of what's the antidote for assumption, but I want to park it here of if you find yourself labeling their expression, their tone, their choice of words, there's a whole lot of assumption and projection coming from our part because those definitions are coming from our experience, which we tend to be attached to.
Yes, and assumptions feel like certainty, which blocks curiosity. So we've created an assumption which becomes the false certainty, and that stops us from having any curiosity because we've created it, which is, I think, the last thing you want in a coaching session. Something I love about the danger of assumptions being sort of this distorted reality is that when you start distorting the reality with assumptions, we're not in a relationship with reality. We're now in a relationship with our own projections. We've projected onto them what we think, and now we've turned that into a reality for us to know. And it really wreaks havoc because you take that assumption that's really your own projection. You now, there's going to be trust issues around there. There's going to be the ways you think about these people. It changes everything about the relationship, whether it's personal, professional, or even in a session. I mean, it really can wreak havoc in all these areas. I mean, I just recently had a situation at work where I was training somebody and I have seen this person only 3 times on Zoom. I thought it was a great session. I followed up with the uppers afterwards and said, hey, it was great. She was asking all the right questions. It went really well, blah, blah, blah. Weeks later, I find out that she's sharing with other people that I was so angry and I was upset and I was frustrated and I was mad. And it was a completely, that was not the reality of my life. And that wasn't the reality of that session. And so it's like we had two very big takeaways from that call, and it all was based on assumptions of what she thought I obviously was saying or how I looked, which was not at all my reality. And so I think that that's really important for us, even if in the coaching session you are not creating assumptions but you're doing it personally, it's still a problem.
And it reminds me of what we talked about in our series of the 5 uncoachable types. If we are living in assumption in the coaching chair, we are actually becoming a version of the know-it-all because we get so attached to our perception being the capital T truth when it's just an idea. But it's so solidly our idea because it comes from our lived experience that we're assuming it must be true for the other individual.
Yeah. And when you assume and then that person finds out you assumed, you've broken the trust with that person. You didn't give them the opportunity to tell them, for them to tell you how they really felt or what was really going on. And it's so hard to build trust, whether it's personally, professionally, or in a coaching session. So if trust is really important in the session, that's one of our core competencies, then we do have to remember that assumption is going to break that. That habit of assuming is going to break that competency.
Yeah. And so we need to take ownership of it, whether we ever speak it to the room or not. We need to notice when our assumptions are coming forward and check them back to turn them into curiosity.
Yes. And one other thing I'll say before we move into the antidote is I've done this. I used to do this, and I see people do it all the time. And I don't know really necessarily where it comes from, but it's when we're trying to solve problems that never existed, or we're trying to take these assumptions and we're creating a whole story around it because our mind needs to create some story, and we spend so much time. I mean, it's such wasted energy for nothing. And these things aren't even true. I mean, they never even existed, what we've created in these assumptions and these stories. And yeah.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of the worst one. The the worst one I have ever seen. And it's the coach who assumes the client needs to take 3 deep breaths before they ever start the frickin' session. Oh, let's come to center before we start. No, no, that is your assumption. That's your hang up, not theirs.
Yeah.
You're robbing them of their authority. You're robbing them of their autonomy because this is how I do it. No, they don't need that. If you need that for you, do it before they ever show up.
Yeah. Again, we assumed. We assumed. And so that's why we've made
Okay.
this the number one habit that is
I think I
wrecking.
bruised my hand.
Yeah, be careful there. I know that you're very passionate about that one. We appreciate you sharing. So, how do we stop assuming? What are some tips that can help us in coaching and maybe even in life that can help us to stop doing these assumptions? What comes to mind for you?
Become self aware of how often you offer unsolicited advice. That would be the first one. Certainly at the end of every session, do a journal, do a breakdown of the session. What did you notice you did? How did you show up? And I love the feedback sandwich of what'd you do well, what could you do differently, better next time, and what else did you do well? That helps. Notice when you're in question rather than just firing the next question out as more of a listen to respond energy. Pause, breathe, sit with your question. Is there something else behind it? Or what's the idea driving that question you have? And if it's driving from assumption, ask yourself if you really want to ask it. Is there a different question you would like to ask? If you find, particularly in a more emotionally intense conversation, if you're holding back, I think how I want to say this. If you're holding back the gut punch question, and I don't mean that as a violent, but like the hard question, the really difficult question, if you're holding it back because you think they can't handle it, that's your assumption.
Mm.
Now, in some grayness, do you maybe want to tee it up? You have to read the room on that one. Like I might have I have a hard question here. Sometimes that will serve. Sometimes it will steal the power from it. Just becoming aware, but they can't ask. They can't answer the question or consider the idea that's never asked. So how are we preventing? How might we be preventing their growth because we think they can't handle it?
Yeah, it makes me think about, are you listening or deciding? And that's really important. And then I also think curiosity moves slower than assumptions. Assumptions are going to be, they come to you very quickly.
Oh, good
Curiosity is
point.
going to go much slower. I think
Yeah,
that's important to keep in mind as well.
and that could be a sign in our clients too.
Mhm.
Are we noticing their assumptions? Because maybe they start rapid fire answering back that are based on their assumptions of what they brought to the room rather than slowing down into, I never thought about it that way before, and giving them space to suddenly shift out of what has been creating their reality.
Absolutely. And I would love for anybody that wants to join us, put in the chat. I would love to know what's one assumption you've made that you've gotten completely wrong. We would love to hear because we've all been there. So this was our video series on the number one habit that is wrecking your coaching and probably your personal life and maybe your professional life as well, which is assumptions. And we really hope that you have maybe a better view on assumptions and also how detrimental they can be in relationships, whether it's in coaching sessions or personal or professional relationships, and maybe some tips on how you can do it differently and how you can start putting those assumptions at bay and just start asking more questions. Anything you'd like to
Yeah.
leave our audiences with?
Yeah. Be curious.
Be curious.
Don't be the ass who assumes. Be curious. That will open up all kinds of possibilities.
And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. We have many more, and we hope to see you soon.
See you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.